a Swedish word that means just the right amount, a Malay word for the time it takes to eat a banana, a Yaghan word for the look between two people who want the same thing, but neither dares make the first move. The internet is full of lists of words that are untranslatable into English. But are they real? Some of them are, but some of them are not. So let's investigate in another RobWords. Now, I've had a lot of help with this one. I've been asking people all over the world whether these words really do exist in their languages and mean what we English speakers are told they mean. And I've uncovered some stuff. We're going to test these words for two things. One, do they mean what the online listicles and memes say they mean? And two, are they really untranslatable? Something we have to do first, though, is to define what we mean by untranslatable, because arguably no word is untranslatable if you can explain what it means. If you have, you've translated it. But for the sake of this video, let's take untranslatable as meaning that you can't translate it into English with a single word, one for one. Take the Danish hygge. No untranslatable list is complete without it, but you can translate it as a quality of coziness and comfortable conviviality that engenders a feeling of contentment or well-being. That is translating it, but it took 15 words. 15 words that I stole from the Oxford English Dictionary. Yes, there's your first revelation right there. Hygge is in the OED. It has been embedded into enough English sentences to make it in. Anyway, hygge does mean what the online lists say it means, and you can't translate it into a single word. Coziness comes pretty close, but Danes will tell you that it's not quite right. So, hygge is legit untranslatable. Another hero of the untranslatable lists that is also in the Oxford English Dictionary is saudade. I've just said it in a terribly British way, but it's a Portuguese word pronounced like this in Portugal,
saudade,
and this in Brazil,
saudade.
Now, if you put saudade into Google Translate, you'll get the one-word translation, longing, but that really doesn't cover it. The famous saudade of the Portuguese is a vague and constant desire for something that does not and probably cannot exist, for something other than the present, a turning towards the past or towards the future. Not an active discontent or poignant sadness, but an indolent, dreaming wistfulness. That definition is from a book published in 1912. This word has been doing the rounds in English texts for over a century, and it's a genuine untranslatable. So what about this one? Pisang zapra, Malay for the time needed to eat a banana. Hilarious. I actually found this one in a book, but is it real? Well, I should say that this is more often listed as two words, pisang zapra, but that doesn't really matter because it appears to be nonsense. The Malay for banana is pisang, I'm told, not pisang, and zapra means nothing in Malay whatsoever. One Malaysian commenter on Quora pointed this out, adding, "We also couldn't care less how long it takes to eat a banana." So what has gone wrong? Well, a reporter at the Malay Mail called Zarira AR went deep into this one and traced the error back to a couple of English books about extraordinary, untranslatable words. It's possible that one of these books had actually got it from the other. The idea then spread still further thanks to posts like this one from the British TV show QI. After Malay speakers pointed out it was gibberish, they took it down and apologised and revealed that they had got the word from a review of one of those two books I just mentioned, the one that included this. Now, I'm not naming the books because starting book beef is not really my style, and they are otherwise good books, but it's thought the author of one of them may have come across someone using a combination of the Malay pisang, banana, and a Tamil word meaning eat. The Malay Mail says this combination, basically banana eating, can have a somewhat vulgar meaning. But anyway, pisang zapra, forget it. Plenty more debunking where that came from. Have you heard of lagom? It's a Swedish word meaning just the right amount. Or is it? Is it real?
Yeah, lagom.
That's Andrea, my Swedish tutor. You know how I like to dabble in different languages. And she says, lagom is definitely a thing.
Lagom is just perfect, and I feel that it describes the Swedish mentality very on point, because it's not too much and it's not too little. It's just the right amount of anything. Is it hot enough or cold enough? That are lagom. It's like, it's perfectly fine.
So that's a big old tick for lagom. I've been having weekly Swedish lessons with Andrea for a few months now, and I just so happen to have found her using this video's sponsor, Preply. They gave me a choice of over 100 tutors whose teaching style matched my learning style after I answered a few questions about how best I learn. And Andrea ticked all the boxes. Learning with an actual human tutor is great. It means you can have a good laugh, but also get taught in a way entirely suited to you. And learning with Preply is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Pick a tutor. They have over 100,000 of them teaching 90 languages. 2. Learn consistently and make progress. And 3. Begin to speak confidently. I'm still a bit rubbish, but I can feel myself making progress with Swedish because actually speaking a language is, from my experience, how you learn. And Preply is designed to get you doing that. Try it out to find the tutor that's going to get you speaking that new language. Use my special link in the description of this video to get a juicy 50% discount off your first lesson with Preply. Now here's a beautiful word, plimp plomp pletterer, a Dutch word for skimming stones across the water. It is imitative of the sound the stone makes as it bounces, then splashes, and it is also not real. I asked my subscribers to confirm or deny the existence of a few of these words. Plimp plomp pletterer was among them. And the unanimous response from Dutch speakers was, it doesn't exist. Flemish speakers too. Perhaps there is some corner of the Low Countries where it's used. The author of this book must have got it from somewhere. Notice it has an N on the end of it here, which perhaps makes more grammatical sense than the version that's doing the rounds online. But it's definitely not standard Dutch, which is a shame, because it's fun. Actually, while I'm showing off my book collection, I'll show you this one that I just bought, the Guinness Book of World Records. I bought it because I wanted to show you a specific record in here, but I can't find it. It might not even be in this edition. So we'll have to make do with this scan of the 2006 edition and this record for most succinct word. It says the most challenging word for any lexicographer, that's a dictionary writer, to define briefly is the Fuegian word mamihlapinatapai, meaning looking at each other, hoping that either will offer to do something which both parties desire but are unwilling to do. You will find this word all over the internet. In fact, it is the name of an EP just released by K-pop band Eyelit. I'm told that's how you pronounce it. And you can see why. A single word for that look shared between two people who want the same thing but dare not make the first move. It's kind of romantic, even a bit sexy. But is it real? Well, this is a tricky one, but thankfully I got some more help. Shout out to Paula, who is in Chile and gave me a massive leg up with this. The Fuegian language that the guys at Guinness are referring to is Yaghan, a language spoken in Tierra del Fuego, in the far southern reaches of Chile and Argentina. At least it was spoken there, but sadly the last fluent speaker died in 2022. Her name was Cristina Calderon, and she was apparently asked about mamihlapinatapai and didn't know it. However, it's not reasonable to expect one person to know all of the words in their language, so that doesn't necessarily mean mamihlapinatapai is not real. More research required. And that research, thanks to Paula helping me navigate some of the Spanish sources on this, weirdly led me back to English. Specifically, this Yaghan to English dictionary, written in 1933. It was written by a missionary, Reverend Thomas Bridges, after spending almost 2 decades in Tierra del Fuego. This book appears to be the sole written source of this word. All the modern listicles and memes trace back to this. To be precise, this bit. There it is. I can't tell you how excited I was to find this. Mamihlapinatapai, to look at each other, hoping that either will offer to do something which both parties much desire done, but are unwilling to do. Now that fits reasonably well with the definition given these days, doesn't it? Although there is one little word in there that I think gives it a different impression to the sexy definition that we have now. The Reverend writes about something which both parties much desire, done. And I feel like the done there makes it sound more like it's about avoiding chores than stealing a kiss, or more. But it's probably close enough, isn't it? However, is the author right about the word existing and its meaning? I mean, it's worth noting that he mentions it not as an entry in the dictionary itself, but just as a curiosity in his general remarks at the start of the book. It's hard not to read something into that. The BBC published an excellent article about this a few years back, and it quotes a linguist who studied Yaghan saying, though Reverend Bridges knew Yaghan better than any European before or since, he was sometimes prone to exoticizing the language and to being very verbose in his translations. The same linguist, Joram Meros, suggests mamihlapinatapai could in fact mean simply to make each other feel awkward. However, the same article includes another interpretation from a Yaghan museum guide who describes it as that instant in which everyone is quiet just before a story is told. So could mamihlapinatapai essentially be a loaded silence or pregnant pause? Unfortunately, we're never going to be sure whether the source of the modern meaning doing the rounds on the English language internet is based on truth or the author's embellishment. So I'm going to give mamihlapinatapai a maybe. Wow, I've just realised we've got over halfway through a video about untranslatable words, and we haven't even mentioned German yet, a particular crime, as I'm speaking to you from Germany, and once did a video entirely about untranslatable German words. German grammar makes it very easy to create long, compound words. It's a feature of a lot of languages, but German catches our imagination for some reason. I came across this as I was riding through Berlin the other day on the outside of a large bakery. It says Broteinfahrt, which literally means bread entrance. So you could say, wow, German has a word for a gate reserved just for bread. But it doesn't really. It's just possible to make that word if you or your marketing department feels like it. I can now imagine Broteinfahrt spreading online as a German word for the unique ingress that can only be achieved by baked goods. Profound. But while I'm being a bit smug, this would be a good time to come clean about some of the words in my untranslatable German video, because I did once or twice fall into exactly the kind of trap that we're talking about. For example, I repeated a common claim about this word, Kummerspeck. Now, it is a genuine term for the weight you put on through comfort eating, and it often gets translated into English as grief bacon. I, however, now think, since doing that video, that this is a little bit overselling the humour of the word. Yes, Speck means bacon, but it also just means fat, you know, the fat that you'd find on bacon. So you could just translate it as grief fat, but obviously that's not as funny as grief bacon. I also cited the word Backpfeifengesicht, a term for someone with a punchable face. Again, it's real, but this one's very seldom used. It exists more as an example of German efficiency than an actual insult, I think, even if Die Ärzte did sing a song about it. Another popular example of Deutsch directness is Schadenfreude, pleasure in someone else's misfortune. But I am convinced that this is in such frequent use in English anyway that it's not even worth mentioning. You could translate now Schadenfreude into Schadenfreude with the lowercase s instead of the capital S from German. It is in the Oxford English Dictionary. Ditto Zeitgeist and Wanderlust. One that I will absolutely stand by from my video about German words is Wegbier. It's a word for a beer that you drink on your way somewhere, usually somewhere where you're going to drink even more of them. But German also has another word for a beer on the go, and that's Fußpils. Pils is the beer, Pilsner, so it basically means foot beer, but it gets extra points for being a pun, because fußpilz is foot fungus. It's athlete's foot. I think we might need to ask the continental Germanic cultures if they're okay, because they have a lot of words for seeking solace in beer. For example, Swedish and Danish have gravöl and graul. I'm sure I've mispronounced both of those, which both mean a beer drunk at a funeral. It's literally a grave beer. I think it can also refer to the wake itself, but it's a beer you drink while reminiscing about a lost friend. On the sunnier side of life, Norwegian has utepils, which literally means outdoor beer, but I'm reliably informed by you that implicit to the word is usually the enjoyment of said beer in the sunshine. It doesn't stretch quite as far as on the first hot day of the year, as some English language sources claim, but nevertheless, it's lovely, and all the more precious thanks to the extreme lengths that your government goes to stop you buying beer. Am I right, Norway? And while we're in the northern reaches of Europe, shout out to the Finns who have kalsarikennit, which means pants drunk. It describes sitting at home, drinking in your underwear with no intention of going out. There is definitely a thing in the Nordics about enjoying the simpler things in life. I was actually discussing this with Andrea, who grew up in the Swedish-speaking bit of Finland.
Yeah, we don't need a lot, I feel. And I can see this with my friends and people here. There's not this hustle mentality, like always going after something new. We're just like, okay, this is enough. Like, I think this feeling of enoughness is very common.
It's very lagom.
Yeah, lagom. We are just, it's lagom, it's enough.
And so we associate the Nordics with words for simple pleasures. But what about strange pleasures? Have you ever come across this word from French? Frotteur. Now, I was always told it described someone who got their kicks from rubbing up against people in crowds. In French, frotter is to rub, but I think I always half believed it was BS. So for this video, I thought I'd check it out once and for all and look it up in one of the big French dictionaries. I searched Larousse's advert-addled website for the word frotteur and found that it says frotteur/frotteuse, because women can be frotteurs too, pratiquante de frotteurisme, or practicer of frotteurism. Okay, frotteurism. So what does that mean then? Click. It is une affection psychiatrique caractérisée par la nécessité de toucher une personne non consentante ou de se frotter contre elle pour obtenir une excitation sexuelle. A psychiatric condition characterized by the need to touch or rub against a non-consenting person to obtain sexual arousal. Yeah, it's real. While we're on potential nightclub behaviours, let me mention this commonly cited untranslatable, mbuki-mvuki. Now, it's sometimes given as being from Bantu, which is a language family, not a language. So what's going on there? Some websites say it's from Swahili, but not all of them. Already a bit suspicious. Anyway, mbuki-mvuki is consistently quoted as meaning to shuck off one's clothes in order to dance. The verb is always shuck in these articles, a term that I have pretty much never heard outside the context of oysters. But anyway, is mbuki-mvuki even real? Well, it is really hard to say. Reliable sources on its origins are few and far between. The best thing I could find was this glossary of African words in American English, which gives it as the source of our term boogie-woogie, and says it means I take off or I shuck off. Then there are these brackets doing a huge amount of extra work. It doesn't specify what language it's from either, so I think we're very much in a citation needed situation here. I also found mbuki in this Swahili to English dictionary, but it's translated as a Malagasy, i.e. someone from Madagascar. Mvuki's not in there at all. It's actually hard to find mbuki-mvuki outside of the context of explaining the African origin of boogie-woogie, which does rather make me think that it's been sort of wished into existence for precisely that purpose. And for what it's worth, the OED, my favourite, says of boogie-woogie, an origin in an African language, as frequently proposed, is not borne out by early evidence. Now that is an etymology burn. I am a bit skeptical about this one, but would love to be proven wrong because mbuki-mvuki is a fun word for what would be a fun concept. If you can shed any more genuine light on the subject, then please do leave me a comment. Don't just put it in a chat bot and then copy and paste whatever that says. If you can shed some real light on where this word came from, or if it even exists, I'd love to hear from you. So we have busted some myths and blown some fake untranslatables out of the water. And that means there's space for some new ones. I asked for your suggestions and you gave me some real beauties. So let's see if we can get plimp plomp pletterer replaced on the lists with the actual Dutch word taalleemte, which means something you don't have a word for. How perfect is that? It's literally a language gap. In English, we'd call it a lexical gap, but the Dutch have it in one word, taalleemte. How about we replace pisang zapra with the Tagalog sumbat, which can refer to the act of bringing up past favours to make someone feel bad. Faith says it's a kind of emotional blackmail. And instead of repeating mamihlapinatapai for the millionth time in the last century, why not go for the Brazilian Portuguese word for that Friday feeling, sextou, a verb that means it's become the weekend, literally Fridayed. Thanks, Connor. Oh, and just lastly, a fun word from Scots, slutter, meaning to eat or drink messily. If you get food down you while you're eating, you've sluttered. And that is my seamless way into reminding you that I am going to be doing 10 nights of my wordy nerdy live show at this year's Edinburgh Fringe. I'll be spending an hour revolutionising the English language, even coming up with a new alphabet every evening from the 6th to the 16th of August. I would love to see you there. I shall put a link to tickets in the description. Thank you so much to everyone who helped with this video, especially Andrea and Paola, and everyone who commented on my community posts, giving me their own untranslatables and also helping me scotch a few myths. Why not tell me some more untranslatable words in the comments? And while you're down there, perhaps you could click subscribe. I think you'd enjoy this video next, and I'll see you over there. Until next time, take care.